and welcome to the Built Environment Marketing Show. The show is hosted by me, Io Abbas. I am a marketing consultant and I deliver marketing strategy, content creation, speaking and training services for architects and engineers. Today's episode is a special crossover one where I will be interviewing my guest, Jon Clayton, as part one of the interview. And then over on his podcast, the Architecture Business Club, he will be interviewing me, which will be part two of the interview. There's a link in the show notes so you can find that episode, and it's also available in the main podcast places too. In my interview with Jon, we talk about how he markets his small practice and how that's evolved over time. We also take a really deep dive into websites and how he's tackled creating the ones for his business. We also look at his coaching and consultancy business and how he learns and where he gets his inspiration for what he's going to do next for his business. So I'll stop speaking so you can get on with listening. Enjoy. Hi, Jon. Thanks so much for coming onto the show. Can you give me a brief intro to who you are and all that you do?
It's a pleasure to be here, Io. My name's Jon Clayton. I help sole practitioners in architecture and small architecture firm leaders to enjoy more freedom, flexibility and fulfillment in what they do. And I do that through coaching and consulting. I'm also a chartered architectural technologist, and I've been working in the architecture industry for over 25 years. And I spent over a decade as a sole practitioner. And I'm also a podcast host. I'm the host of the Architecture Business Club podcast.
Yeah, I love podcasting, as do you. So no, well done on that. Podcasting is one of those things where you're like, it's a lot of work, but it's really good fun as well. And so when you started out, I guess as an architectural technologist all those years ago, what was your approach to marketing your business and business development then?
That's a great question. So my approach, when I first started out, my first business in architecture, it started as a side hustle. And as a bit of a perfectionist, I think there's a lot of perfectionists out there working in architecture. It's all about the detail and all of that. It took me ages to get started. It's like I spent months trying to write a business plan, this, that, and the other. But interestingly, the approach to begin with, actually, it was a digital first approach. And the reason was because I was working in another practice and started this side hustle. And I wanted to just do projects with homeowners that were doing home extensions or home renovation projects, because really I thought that's the thing right now, that I've been doing a few of those jobs on the side anyway, as many of myself and my colleagues used to do. And I thought, yeah, that's something that I could do alongside this existing job. I did go and speak to my employers about it, and they said, yeah, that's fine. You know, as long as we're not interested in those little jobs anyway. So, but I also thought, like, I was trying to be future focused and thinking about, well, if I want to grow this business, I might want to attract customers outside of the local area. So I thought maybe like an online approach, like an online architectural service company for homeowners. I thought, how cool would that be? And
when was this?
This was before pretty much everyone else that's doing it now did it. So there was like one other business that I found that was offering this service, and the website was rubbish. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. So I set up a website. I had a friend who had a web agency, and he managed to give me a really great deal to get the website done. So I invested the little money that I had went in the website. And then we got started. And the vision to begin with was this whole idea that it was going to be this online architectural service company. It's not quite how it worked out, because what happened was inquiries started to come in, and a lot of them were via the website. But what I was finding was that the local inquiries were just so much easier to convert because you could go and meet the customer in person. And then what happened is it kind of went a little bit off track, that I had this original idea, but then when it came to actually implementing the plan, after we'd built the website, I got sidelined because I was saying yes to all of the local projects that came in, and then those led on to more local projects. And then what happened is it ended up becoming like many other local architectural companies, whereby we're heavily reliant on referrals, because all of the projects then were in this kind of small local geographic area, which was a blessing and a curse, which we can probably explore in a little bit more detail as we continue the conversation.
So that's fascinating. You had one of the first websites doing that. It's quite, I guess it's a bit ahead of its time, really, wasn't it? But it's but it's interesting that the word of mouth kind of won the way in a way, wasn't it?
It did, yeah. I think at the time, I mean, I didn't really care too much about where the customers were based, but because I didn't put as much effort into converting the inquiries from other areas, and basically my digital strategy didn't really extend any more than the website. I think naively thought, with my lack of education around digital marketing, thought that the website on its own was enough. Kind of this like, if we build it, they will come attitude.
Because they will come from wherever. That's the thing. And it's like, how are you going to service that, right?
Yeah, but it's not just that, is it? I mean, the website's just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to digital marketing. And I think that I didn't really have any ongoing strategy in place. And then I just got busy with the local projects that came in. And then that's what I ended up leading into at the time.
Fantastic. And how was your kind of for your company? How's that brand evolved over time? How's it changed? How's it morphed from that original website?
Oh, it's changed a lot, Io. Yeah. I mean, to begin with, the name, the traded name to begin, was Complete Plans, and this came out of a brainstorming session with the web agency and their staff. We were throwing around all sorts of different ideas, and it was like, the customers that we're aiming for, it's the small projects, domestic markets, so loft conversions, house extensions. What is it they're looking for? What is it they want? And often it was, the builders told us we need some plans. So that's what we want.
Can you do them? Can you draw them for me?
Just draw them, just give us the drawings. And so that's kind of how the name came about. I kept that name for, I think, a few years. And then what happened was we got to a point, it would be around 2015, 2016, where we decided to relocate from where we were living in Lancashire to East Anglia into Norfolk. And at that point, I went through a name change. And the reasoning behind it at the time was that I thought that I'm moving into a different market. The biggest city of any size was Cambridge. So that was the biggest kind of place where I thought there was going to be lots of customers. So I thought, rather than trying to focus on the little market town where we were going to be living in northwest Norfolk, that I would be focusing more on Cambridge. And I thought, I want to offer a fuller service. The clients have got more money to spend. They're going to be higher value projects. They're not just going to want the design and plans. They're going to want a full architectural service. The name then changed to Complete Architecture. The website was redesigned. So it was Complete Architecture for a while. And then it went through another transition where I then started trading using my own name, which was something that I'd previously resisted it, because for whatever reason, and this is bizarre in that actually it's one of the most common things that, like, you see architecture firms out there, and it's always, like John Smith Design or JC Design or whatever.
Or it's either marketing.
Yeah. But I didn't do that. And then I got to this point where I was like, this name, it doesn't work anymore, because I was wanting to change up some of the services that I was offering. I was interested in exploring other opportunities, like creating courses and also dropping some of the services, because having been focusing on that different audience for a little while, I realized that there were some elements of it that I actually didn't enjoy as much, or they were just really high maintenance, and it in some ways made the business less scalable. So then I was like, actually, I want to kind of like change things up again, and not necessarily take a backward step and go back to what we had before. And I was at an in-person mastermind event in London, like a one-day event, and I got a chance to pose this question to the room. And I was like, I don't know what to do. It used to be called this business, and now it's this name, and I'm wondering what it should be next. And I'm not happy with either of the previous options, and it needs to change. And somebody just said, like, Jon, why don't you just use your own name? Like, just use your own name. And I was like, okay, I not really. And it was so obvious, really. I thought, well, I don't really kind of thought of that, but kind of, and they said, well, yeah, because if you use your own name, then it's like you can, whatever pivots you make, whatever changes you make.
What you need it to be, right?
Yeah, because you're never going to change your name. So most people aren't going to change their name, unless you get married, perhaps.
I've not done that yet.
There's still time. There's still time. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. And then more recently, since I started the podcast last year, I recognized that that was something kind of separate. And actually realized that there was pros and cons to using my own name. That what I started doing without realizing it was starting to build and cultivate my personal brand.
Yeah.
But because I was also using my name as like the business trading name. And then when we got to the point of I'm going to launch this podcast, I thought, actually, there needs to be some separation. Like, I still want to be able to cultivate and grow my personal brand, but I don't want it to just be the Jon Clayton show, because that doesn't really encompass.
It doesn't also say much, does it? It's also a thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're some kind of like if you're Beyonce or something, you could have the Beyonce show and everyone would know who you are. But you
could be the new Taylor Swift. Is that what we're going with this?
Well, I don't know about Taylor Swift, but you get the idea. I mean, if you're somebody like Gary Vee or somebody, one of these big business gurus, you can have a podcast that's your name. But when it's, I thought actually a name that was just something a bit more obvious to what it's about, which is where the kind of Architecture Business Club came about, because it's conversations about the business side of architecture, and the club element being that it's about trying to build community and trying to build a community.
But the podcast names is also about discoverability, isn't it? So it's about if I'm searching through Spotify looking for something, and I can go, oh, that does what I need. It kind of that's also part of the name, isn't it? If you haven't got
absolutely
massive following, it's a lot to do with that. It's like, can your podcast name tell people what they're going to be getting from it? And that's the most important part. Yeah,
it's SEO friendly, and as you say, those are the words that somebody looking for an architecture podcast about business, they're going to type in those words, and hopefully my show's one of the shows that comes up.
Fantastic. Okay, so next question. So when you moved to Norfolk, did you have to kind of reset? I know when we spoke previously, you said that you had to basically start from scratch because the market wasn't there and your contacts were elsewhere in Lancashire. How did you do that? Or how did you kind of realize you need to try something different?
Yeah. So there's what I did and there's what I would do now. And they're both two very different things. So what I did was I did some market research in advance, which was a sensible thing to do. I'd decided in my mind that I needed to change the name and do this rebrand. To be honest, with hindsight, I didn't really need to do that. Like that actually wasn't really necessary in my opinion now, looking back in hindsight. But I did do that. And a couple of other things that I did was in advance, I took a trip down to Cambridge. I had family that lived in Cambridge, and I went and tested out a co-working office there to just see what it was like, to get an experience of working in Cambridge. I set up a virtual address there. So prior to moving, we had a Google listing in Cambridge with a local phone number and a local address at that business centre. And and those were the kind of the main things that I did. The other thing that I did is after we moved, I switched my address. In fact, I think, at that time I had a physical office on the high street, but what I did is I switched that to a virtual office address at a business centre in Lancaster, because I thought that, I'm not just going to rock up in Cambridge and just have a flood of new inquiries. I thought I'm probably still going to be a little bit reliant on some of the, So what happened was I set up a virtual address. The phone number stayed the same. So to all intents purposes, inquiries would come in, and the perception was that I still had a presence and was still serving clients in Lancashire as well as in East Anglia. And it worked in that I still had the constant stream of inquiries from Lancashire. What didn't work was that I didn't do anywhere near enough to get established in East Anglia. And because I was still reliant on the referral business that was coming through and people ringing up that Lancashire phone number, I neglected to do what I really should have done.
All the networking in your new geography. And I guess your hand wasn't forced because the phone was ringing, right?
My hand wasn't forced because the phone was ringing, and also it suited me at the time because we were moving to an area where, like, other than some extended family members, like I had no friends, I didn't know anybody, I had no business connections. So it was really hard. And I thought, well, actually, if I'm still got a foot in the door back home, then that gives me a reason to once a month take a little business trip, go and see my parents, visit my friends, go and do a couple of client meetings and property surveys, and then come back to East Anglia and do the work. And I did that for a heck of a long time. I probably did that. I did a road trip to Lancashire, which is nearly like a 500-mile road trip. I did that once a month. Yeah, and it's not where we live in Norfolk, it's not the easiest place to get to. There isn't a motorway nearby. So there's a lot of A roads on the journey. And for a while, it was great and I really enjoyed it. But after a while, after a year or so, I was like, you know what? I'm just getting really tired of this. I don't want to be so reliant on the work from there. And what I then realized is I'd neglected to do all the other things that I should have been doing or could have been doing, things that didn't necessarily have to cost money, like going to networking events, meeting people in person, building up relationships, going to making connections with industry connections as well. So going to like the local, Cambridge Architects Social that they have each month.
Which is huge. There's a huge architectural community around Cambridge.
Huge architectural community, yeah. And CIAT, they have a really active East Anglia group for CIAT as well. So there was all these other industry groups of peers that I could have connected with then, and also opportunities to go to the regular sort of business networking things and to get my name out there. And I didn't do it. And I think partly it was because I was still reliant on the referral work from Lancashire. And also it was because it was out of my comfort zone. It was, I'm more of believe it or not, I'm more of an introvert. I'm like going to a big networking event, walking in a room full of people where I don't know anybody and having to go up and have those conversations. It wasn't something that came naturally to me. And I've learned to get better at it over time. But back then, it was totally outside of my comfort zone. And that's another one of the reasons why I didn't do it. If I was going to do it again, I would recommend that really, if you were going to relocate, that those would be the things I would be leaning into, the relationship building and in-person stuff.
Hi, it's Io here, and I just wanted to interrupt the show quickly to say a bit more about what I do. I'm a digitally led marketing consultant and I specialise in working with built environment firms just like yours. I think there's so much more that AEC firms can do to make the most of the digital marketing opportunity. And if it's something that you would like to explore working with me, how to make the best of online and in-person worlds, then do get in touch. Email me at io, which is AYO, at abbasmarketing.com, and let's have a chat. What marketing advice would you give to a practice, knowing what you've done with I guess you've set up twice in a way, haven't you, in two different locations? What advice would you give to a practice?
I would say that having a strategy is really important. having a marketing strategy that is aligned with your business goals and the type of customers that you want to work with, the number of new projects or clients that you need to secure each year. And that's something that you can either work on it yourself, or you can work with somebody else, a consultant like yourself or me or another. You can go online. Information is so readily available now. You could even go online and, if you don't have the budget, you could use YouTube, Google, ChatGPT to help you with that. But have some kind of strategy. I wouldn't suggest that you just go, oh, you know what? Like, everyone has a website. We have to have a website. Everyone's on Instagram. Like, we have to be on Instagram. Like, we have to be on this other platform.
Spread yourself too thinly, right? It's just,
yeah. Oh, like TikTok. We have to do TikTok. You end up spreading yourself so thinly, and you end up just, if it's not something that's sustainable, it's better to be in less places and be there on a consistent basis than to try and be everywhere all at once. And particularly if you're a small business, if you're a startup, if you're a business of one, you don't have the time and resources. You don't have the time, resources, or money to do everything all at once. Like, you've still got the work to do to deliver the results for your clients, and you've got to obviously get those leads coming in. So what I would suggest is have a strategy that's aligned with your goals, and pull together a marketing plan that is sustainable, so that it's something that is manageable for you. It's going to lead to the results that you're looking for, but it's something that you can actually consistently do. And then in future, time, money, resources allowing, you can expand that and you can ramp up your marketing efforts. So that could be, for example, with social media, you might pick one main platform and that is it, like one platform.
But one platform's enough. If you look, like, when you hear about people talking about Instagram, for example, they're saying you're meant to have like a social media strategy for Instagram stories, for reels, for your profile, for your DM. Like, they're literally treat them like 4 different channels, and that's just on Instagram. So for me, it's like you say, but it's like on that one platform. If you look at LinkedIn, the amount of different ways you can connect and share information and engage, it's massive. But you just do it very, very well. So you become really good at one platform or one thing or one type of marketing.
Yeah. I think that with digital now, there's so many different options that we have. There's an infinite number of options that you can use to market your business, but you've only got so many hours in the day, and you've presumably only got a finite budget. And if you try and do too much of this stuff, you're very quickly going to fall off the wagon. So I would suggest having a strategy that, an example might be to say that, okay, as a practice, we're going to commit to once a month, we create one long form piece of content. So that could be a blog article that goes on our website, could be a podcast episode, it could be a video. And then you could spend the month, you could repurpose that. And it could be that you go, we're going to do a fortnightly email newsletter. You could have a very simple.
Which is just what we did in the past 2 weeks. It could literally be as simple as like a diary.
Yeah, it's like what we've been doing as a practice, what we've got coming up, and if there's a new blog or resource or video that you've created that month, and then, case studies as well. It could be that be realistic. Like how frequently are you going to be able to add them on your website, and how much effort are they going to take to pull together? So you might just say, well, we're just going to commit to every quarter we add a new case study, and we just build it up incrementally over time. And then that's another piece of content that you can share in your marketing. So I think that you can be very strategic about it. What we don't want to do is be in a position where you are each day thinking, like, oh, I need to post something on Instagram. I don't know what to post.
A lot.
You can waste a lot of time, and then you end up like being a consumer of content rather than a creator, because when you go on the platform and you haven't planned what you're already posting, or you haven't scheduled it before, you could end up just losing time. Like scrolling.
I know.
Terrible.
So I was looking, and you've got your website's relatively new, isn't it? Which I did really like, your Jon Clayton website. So it's your 3rd website then.
Oh, I've got a couple of different
I started
websites
looking
I
and I
own.
was like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, you've always spoken about two. It was complete plans.
There was complete plans, then there was complete architecture, then there was like the hasty rehash of that complete architecture website to make it Jon Clayton. Then
Okay,
there was a second version of that site
right.
framework.
Okay, so that's
Then there
free.
was
Okay,
then there was the totally brand new Jon Clayton site, which is
so the one
about
that's there now.
which is the one that's still up and live, which is about 2 years old ish.
Okay.
And then I've also got architecturebusinessclub.com, which is the newest website, which launched around early this year. So it would have been maybe around February time. So yeah,
That's five, basically, more or less.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. 5 or 6. I lose count.
No, but they kind of. I'm often like, do you know what? It's funny when I'm in a room with other marketeers, and we're often there going, you know what? I'm really bored of my brand now. It's like, and I work with designers, they're like, don't do it, don't change it. It's like, because it's like, I've got the tools to change it. I can easily change it myself, and it's just like. It's like a busman's holiday, isn't it? Oh, we'll just change it. It's easy.
Absolutely.
So basically you've had 5 websites, which is quite interesting. Any tips on doing a website and how to, I guess, get it right from point one?
Okay. Let me think what would be the best tips. So I would say keep front of mind that your website is for your clients. It's not for your peers. So a common thing that I see amongst architecture websites is they're designed for other architects. And they're not always very user friendly. There's always a huge emphasis on portfolio. So it's always about showing the finished spaces and the finished buildings. And hey, we're great. Look how amazing we are. Look at our designs. And there's less about actually providing potential customers with the information they need to decide if this is the right person to contact about their project. And some of that information, that's not just showing shiny pictures of like the shiny new building that you've designed. It's also, it can be written content. It can be content that's explaining about your process, about how you work, about what your beliefs are as a practice, like showing the team, like showing your face. Like people buy from people. Often you don't even see the face of the business owner on there, let alone the extended team. So it's about making a website that's fit for purpose for your customers, your ideal clients, not your peers. And that's going to, how you present that is going to be different. If your clients are typically home renovators, you're going to have a very different style of site and language that you should be using for them to understand what you're talking about without the architect speak. If you're working with developers or you're working with larger sort of corporate clients, commercial clients, then the language, the way that you set the site up is going to be different again. So it's understanding your clients and designing the website with them in mind. Yeah, I would also say clarity's over quantity. So it's better to have a small, clear website that has just 1 or 2 pages than to try and have a big, massive website that's difficult to navigate, that's overblown. That, I remember the lesson I learned from the very first website was that actually what I tried to do in the beginning, it was too complex. There was too many pages. It took far too long to launch. And really what it needed was just the basic structure that could be built upon. So, and now if you have something like, say, a WordPress website, it's very easy to just add to it over time. You could start off with something really simple, homepage, clear call to action, an about page, a quick overview of your services and process. And, and that's really, to get started, that's all you need. Like then the case studies or the blog articles, those can all come with time and be added incrementally, and that can be part of your marketing plan moving forward.
I always find it interesting on that, because I kind of say to some people sometimes, I'm like, don't spend a ton of money for your first year on your website and stuff, because until you've actually launched your business, it's like you don't know what people are going to buy from you. You know what I mean? And you do find, don't you? Like once you start doing it, you're like, people aren't paying me for that, but they are paying me for that. And it's just like, you need something that you can kind of, I started with my first website. It was the color purple, and I built it myself on Squarespace, and then it's evolved from there. And then like a year in, then I got my branding done and all that kind of stuff. And then had a new website built. But otherwise, I just think it's just one of those things where until you're actually selling, and you find out what your clients actually really want, it takes time.
Absolutely.
And you're kind of getting it out there and launched, and then it's like, I know I'm going to adapt this. Don't be too wedded to it. I think that's the key thing.
And what if you, like you say, if you want to change up your services and pivot things, if you've spent X number of hundreds or thousands of pounds on a really fancy sales page for a product that isn't shifting in the quantity you're hoping it is, then it's just like, what was the point? It's a kind of waste of money. You'd be better off just, excuse me, having a basic website, and then even like your sales copy and your materials for a given package could be quite rough already. It could be as simple as a Google Doc or a slide deck. And then if it then, with testing and as sales progress with that, you could then go, what, this is a hot seller. Let's have a proper sales page on the website for it. Let's actually put some money behind the content. I think the other thing, that I would just add around the website is if someone's thinking of getting a website done, I would say that you need to be realistic about how much time you're going to need as a client. So even if you're not going to build it yourself, even if you're going to set aside budget and you're going to go to a developer or an agency to get them to build your site, don't underestimate the amount of time that you personally as a business are still going to have to put into it. Because, unless then you're also employing a graphic designer, a content writer, and all of that. And even if you employ all of those people, they still got to have...
tell them. You need to tell them what to do. They can't just go off and do it without you. Without, it's hands off. No, it's not. It's your business.
No, it's a collaborative project, and it will take time to do it. So regarding the most recent experience of building a website, which is worth sharing, earlier this year, I launched a website for Architecture Business Club, and like the previous websites, I'd used a developer, and I was happy with the results, but it did take a lot of time, and there was a lot of planning that had to be done in advance by me to make sure they had all of the assets, all of the copy, or the images, everything they needed. And this time, I thought I need something quick. And I didn't have a huge budget available either. And I thought, what is the quickest and easiest way that I can have a reasonably decent looking website that's good enough that allows me the opportunity to expand upon it later? And I ended up going to my previous web developer had a separate company called Pixel Fresh Websites that sells website WordPress templates, but also supported by a full set of instructions. Basically, like the course was included, the kind of how to build the website course was included with the templates. And I literally just like, right, it wasn't a lot of money. It was like £200-300. I was like, right, I'm going to buy that. And within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to launch the website. The previous website took 6 months from idea to launch, took 6 whole months. Yeah. The Architecture Business Club website, from deciding to launch, to deciding I needed one, to launching it, 2 weeks.
But that's the difference, isn't it? And I think in some ways to just say, I'm just going to do it within a short period of time. Yeah. In some ways, that's the best way. Like you put constraints on yourself and all of a sudden you're like, right, it's done. And you just have to just give it a go. And I think as well, like the templates you get on like WordPress or Squarespace and stuff, they are really good. And like the Squarespace interface has changed so much in the past year that it's so much easier. And like to really get like a decent product and amend it yourself. I mean, I use a web developer now and then, but then like it's literally just to build a couple of pages, and then from then on I look after my website. I just do it
absolutely. I do the same.
Page, just you don't need to waste money on that. It's just it's a no-brainer. But yes, thank you for that. That was really useful. I like talking websites. It's always a good one. One thing actually on you take more of a kind of productized approach to what you sell in a way, don't you? So you've got like packages, which is a lot more how people sell. I guess like you get a lot of coaches and stuff who sell like that, but you're actually selling architectural design services in that way, which I thought was really interesting because not many architects do that, do they?
Yeah, I think that came about because my niche was homeowners doing home renovation projects. I felt that the traditional way that architectural services was sold and how it was presented wasn't a best fit for homeowners. They didn't understand the jargon. They didn't understand the RIBA work stages.
Stage of works, yeah.
It's like strategic, definition and concept design. And it's like I wanted to come up with a way of communicating things in a way that they would understand. So using their language and their terms. And also because I'd recognized I had a huge knowledge gap around business and marketing. Since we relocated to Norfolk, so about 8 years ago, I started going to training courses, workshops, events, conferences, all about business and marketing, because I realized I don't have enough customers. I need to do something about it. Like, what can I do? So I started going to these events, and a lot of those events, there were many coaches and consultants, and I got to see how they presented their packaging, how they packaged up services in a different way. So I guess
it's interesting, isn't it, when you compare it to our industry, because it is very different. And I go to the same things as you, and you're like, we don't do that here. It's fascinating to see. I know, because we met each other in person actually at Atomicon, which is a sales and marketing conference. I mean,
Absolutely.
even just walking into those conferences, it's so different than a industry conference because everyone's on social media. Everyone's taking pictures. You know what I mean? And I'm always like, this is not a construction industry event.
Yeah, they're definitely more kind of social media savvy, aren't they?
Yeah. I'm like, this is not UK Construction Week, because everyone's there like going, you need to on my video and all this kind of stuff. So, no, that's really interesting. I think the productized thing is, there's a few practices I've seen now who are starting to do that, the online packages and things like that, which it's kind of how people are getting used to buying. And I think, like you say, the REBA stage of works doesn't really work for human beings, does it? It doesn't make any sense unless you're an architect.
Yeah, there's a few big players that specialize in the residential market. Companies like Resi, there's Hoco Design as well, which pitch themselves as the homeowners architects. And they have a very different way of communicating with their clients. They use a lot of cutting edge technology, and they talk using their language. Yeah.
So they are definitely, and they're growing fast. They're growing really fast. So it's quite interesting about how those new players will actually have an impact on the traditional architecture sector, because I think they will do. It's like, there's no way they can't. That's another fascinating area. So do you want to finish off, do you want to talk about a bit about your podcast a bit more? So the Architecture Business Club. So what is it? Who do you interview? Who's your next guest?
Well, funnily enough, Io, I do believe you're making an appearance actually this very same day that this episode is being released. So that was sort of neatly segued into that. So the Architecture Business Club podcast, it's mainly an interview-based show. So I have amazing guests like yourself that come on, and I chat with them every week about business, marketing, sales. We've covered everything from personal branding, packaging up your services, social media, all sorts of different things. Basically, all the stuff that we don't get taught when we go to architecture school or when you go to college to study architecture and technology. So it's all the other stuff that when you start a business in architecture, you go, oh my goodness, there's all this other stuff I now need to know about, and I don't know where to start, and I'm now totally overwhelmed. So we have a weekly podcast. It's usually 30 minutes or so interview, and then once a month I do a solo episode where I share some of my own experiences. And I'm not positioning myself as any kind of guru. It's warts and all. So it's very much like, this is what I did. These are all the mistakes that I made. This is what I learned from it. So it's kind of that approach. And also I do I offer consulting and coaching for small firm architects. So if you're a sole practitioner or a micro-sized practice owner and you need some more hands-on support, I offer that. And also we have a WhatsApp discussion group at the moment. I am looking to launch a paid community in the coming months. I don't have a date exactly when it's going to be launching.
You're going to build that in like 2 weeks or some point where you'll be like, that's the deadline.
Yeah, well,
aren't you?
Yeah, I think the plan is that we're going to do a beta run where we're going to just do kind of rough and ready minimum viable version of it, and then get some feedback from the participants in that for, say, a 3-month beta testing period. And then following that, then there would be a more proper launch for a community for architecture business owners. So that's kind of what I've got going on. Yeah.
Awesome. So where do people find you? Where's the best place to connect? Okay,
so the best place to connect is on LinkedIn. So perhaps if we could maybe put a link to my profile in the show notes, that would be awesome. Good. And also the Architecture Business Club websites. If you go to architecturebusinessclub.com, so that's going to be the best place for any architects or any people that are working within the built environment listening to the show. That's going to be the best website to direct people to.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Io.
Thanks so much for listening to the Built Environment Marketing Show. Don't forget to check out the show notes, which will have useful links and resources connected to this episode. You can find that on abbasmarketing.com. And of course, if you like the show, please do share it with others on social, as it helps more people to find us. See you soon.